about this more, a way to really kind of pull it all together is from a line that I put in this chapter that's in this book that we've referenced already. And that line is that this idea of using augmented reality as a mechanism for teaching for change is really where NIAM has re-envisioned art activism as a kind of public pedagogy of the oppressed, which re-envisions youth artists as educators and their art as socio-political tools for a process of placemaking that demands the recognition of the marginalized in this reality and offers this shared learning experience that is meant to be liberatory, right? Because reality is not plastic. It is movable, it can be changed. And so for the artist, it is liberatory. And for the viewer who's taking in this alternate reality, this counter narrative, it is also meant to be liberatory. So we can go into the videos. I'll very quickly. This is a piece by Leah, and she was a 25-year-old artist. And one of the things I want to say actually before there you go. All of the pieces, thank you, Josh. All of the pieces tell a story, and they're very short stories. There's no sound to the stories. But the point of it is to really look at an instance of gun violence. And in this instance, we're thinking about police violence and the choices that one can make and what paths that can take you down. And thinking about the vision of this individual and what will be our legacy. So each of these pieces ends with a question mark that is meant, again, for the viewer to think to themselves, how do I fit into this? Where is my place in this conversation on gun violence? This billboard was created by our youngest artist, who was 16. Her name is Millie, and for her, what was really important was illustrating the magnitude of in terms of how this was impacting her peers, right? And using a familiar symbol and then expanding that to say, if you understood what was happening, we would see shoes all across the sky in Chicago for youth who are missing. So to Josh's point, making the invisible visible. This was B.R. Al's piece. He was 25 years old when he made this. The story that he was telling here was another perspective on gun violence. And one of the things working with these young people, I have to say, is that so many of us think about gun violence in like one particular way: gang violence, police violence, school shootings. But he was illustrating here what it means when a parent is lost, right? And how children then become the protectors of other children. And when do we, and understanding that he wanted people to think, when do we take a stand? I mean, how can we be watching the news and say, oh, we see that this person has died, but are we thinking about what those repercussions of their death really means? This was a really complex art piece that was created by a 17-year-old artist. Her name was Daria. And there was a lot that she wanted to say. And beautiful thing, Daria was not a person who was a public speaker. And she really never saw her art as doing, big things in the world. And so this, being a part of NIAM, was significant for her. This piece was representing for her that politicians are holding young people hostage, that it could be any young person of any color in terms of the impact of gun violence, and that we should not assume that this is not going to impact us because of the neighborhood we live in, because of whatever our skin color is, and so on and so forth. That because policy isn't being changed, we are all victim.
So to support Dr. Samuel's work in the National Youth Art Movement as part of our collaboration, the Immersive Environments 1 course at Columbia College Chicago started integrating art activism work and AR production skills into the 100 level class. And so what I'll be showing right now are examples that students put together based on the collection that Kristen talked about at the beginning of the presentation at the Museum of Contemporary Photography, where they augmented those photos as part of telling a story, about resolving gun violence, about addressing gun violence. And through these in-class workshops, they gain the skills necessary to work with future youth to help them do this work as part of a public pedagogy. So this is work from Des Boyle. Here he takes the image and he creates a 3D model of it. There was a particularly violent street corner, and as the user moves their body, that spatially embodied context, they get to the nighttime where the gun violence is actually occurring. When they step back, it's just a regular street corner. This was a particularly compelling piece that really uses the subject matter and the physical subjects of the material, using the affordance of making the invisible visible, as well as spatial embodiment and spatial cognition. This work from Mackenzie Kaufman looks at the work from Nancy Floyd. Mackenzie was particularly taken by the subject matter and found it to be rather surreal and absurdist. And so they approached this work that way, sort of taking the fish tank that is inside of the image, sort of expanding it outward, filling the content with fish, and making a comment about the ideas that guns in women's hands actually makes them safer, and sort of interrogating them. This is work from Devin Ball, in which President Bush Jr. Was giving a speech that was particularly not expressive about the school shooting that had happened. And Devin made sure that the information was brought to the fore, using the balloons to represent those poor students that are no longer with us. This work by Catherine Schoen takes the image and turns it into 3D. This is an image representing the shooting that happened in Northern Illinois. And when you click on the different pictures, you're able to sort of pay tribute and highlight the memory of those that are no longer with us. This piece by Genesis allows the individual to truly actually walk into the photo, to look around the scene, to be in the experience. It was the site of a shooting, and when the user taps on the photo, the world shatters, and this messaging appears. So all of these